Anyways, let's get
Whatever.
into the next story. Since we're talking about Republicans and their beliefs and some of their stories and some of their, conspiracy theories. Vivek Ramaswamy, who has not really taken a hard interview whatsoever, hasn't gotten any pushback. I think he's going to join the Olympic team, fam, as a skater because he gets to skate in all his interviews, right? He doesn't get the public pressure. And he's been presenting this one theory, and I like to call it, let's bring it up. It's called the Great Replacement Theory, fam. And I got a question for you. Let's bring it on up, buddy. Come on, Cheese Slice. Where we at? Let's bring it on up. All right. So the Great Replacement Theory, and I'm going to start from the top. Okay. So make it as big as you can. Let's scroll right into it. In mid-September 2021, get up there. All right. Get that as big as you can. Can you open that up? There you go. All right. In mid-September 2021, the U.S. media turned its attention to an increasing number of Haitian migrants seeking protection at the border in Del Rio, Texas. We all remember this. They were at the border. They went into this whole thing that they were being abused and beaten. While most of the arriving migrants, were either turned back into Mexico or deported to destitute conditions in Haiti, some Haitian families were allowed to stay in the U.S. and pursue asylum claims in immigration court. On September 22nd, cable television host Tucker Carlson provided his own theory as to what's happening at the border. Now, I want to say something. It wasn't just his idea. This has been floated before. He's the one who just kind of lifted it into the public spotlight. But it is a bullshit theory, right? And we'll get into that, and I'm going to explain why. And I'm going to even let Fiorella tell you why it's bullshit. We'll ask her in a second. Tucker Carlson provided his own theory to what's happening at the border in a segment titled "Nothing About What is Happening is an Accident." Carlson said that the current U.S. border policy is designed to change the racial mix of the country. In political terms, this policy is called the Great Replacement, the replacement of legacy Americans with more obedient people from faraway countries. Carlson concluded that President Biden's policy with regard to Haitian migrants have put the U.S. on a suicidal path. Since Carlson's comments, numerous public figures on the far right, and I don't know, I'm going to say far right, just say populist right, whatever. I know they're going to try to weaponize this too as well. The left has weaponized this bullshit as well to pit people against each other instead of just sticking to the facts. These people have echoed to support the Great Replacement Theory, which has also been called White Replacement Theory or simply Replacement Theory. And it has started to gain broader attention. On September 29th, Axios summarized the situation. A racist conspiracy theory goes mainstream. Several more moderate conservatives have criticized the theory for being anti-American for its roots in white supremacy, including George W. Bush and former Reagan administration official Linda Chavez. But what exactly is the Great Replacement Theory, and where did it come from? How is it being used today, and what implications of it is growing in popularity? What the Great Replacement Theory is, okay? Now, some of this is weaponized. I'm going to just read these last 3 points right over here because the one in the middle that we're going to talk about is the most important one, because the theory of the Great Replacement Theory, for it to work, has one important snag in it, whatsoever, okay? The Great Replacement Theory, in simple terms, states that welcoming immigrant policies, particularly those impacting non-white immigrants, are part of a plot to undermine and replace the political power and culture of white people living in Western countries. Multiple iterations of the Great Replacement Theory have been and continue to be used by anti-immigration groups, white supremacists, that's where they're kind of hyping this up, because I don't think it's just white supremacists. I think everyday Americans, especially on the populist right, believe in this. Prominent iterations include what? Rhetoric invasion. The theory often uses martial and violent rhetoric of migrant invasion that must be stopped before it conquers white America. Okay, blowing that out of proportion a little bit. That is somewhat accurate. But here's the cherry, guys. Here's the important part. Voter replacement. The theory also sometimes incorporates the inaccurate assumption that non-white immigrants will vote a certain way, and therefore pro-immigration policies are designed by elites to diminish the political influence of white Americans. I'm not going to get into the anti-Semitism part. That's enough. Get to us full screen real quickly. Let's talk about this. Fam, The whole theory of the great replacement theory that Vivek Ramaswamy echoed at a debate, and we'll show it, really doesn't hold weight, because they're saying that what's going to happen is that they're going to allow immigrants to come in, intertwine or assimilate into white America, and then they're going to vote. What is the biggest problem with the fact of the great replacement theory, which makes you go, okay, really quickly and say, bullshit? Go ahead.
Immigrants can't vote.
Say that again.
Immigrants can't vote. They don't vote.
Hold on. Say it one more time, nice and loud, for everybody out there to hear.
Immigrants can't vote. Illegals, right? Quote unquote illegals, people without papers, undocumented people, cannot vote.
Yes.
In fact, they don't want to vote because it is a felony for them to vote, and they literally have to be on their best behavior while they're waiting for papers, or while they're or if they're hiding, if they don't have papers, because otherwise any sort of infraction, even a speeding ticket, could get them deported or caught by the Department of Homeland Security. How do I know this? Well, I spent a lot of time in Florida and California, where there's a lot of immigrants. And also I've had family members that are immigrants, and myself and my family. So the process to get citizenship in the United States, it takes years and decades. And people who come here illegally and don't have papers, the last thing on their mind is voting. So for them to twist this and say that this theory is somehow real, and I've seen this a lot in Europe, and also as well with a lot of conservatives and populist right, saying, we agree with Russia, we agree with what's going on, but there's, these migrants are coming in and they're trying to replace us. It's just fear mongering by, honestly, the elite class, and they're letting it happen in Europe because Europe is a very small space compared to the United States, right? And so you have all these migrants coming in from Africa, and why they're coming in never gets talked about. Why they're coming into these Western countries never gets talked about. It's only like, oh, they're coming in and they're crazy and this and that, and that, sometimes that may be true, but the reality is that this whole thing is being put on the right as they're trying to take our jobs, they're trying to take our work, and that's the same rhetoric we see here in the United States. Now, there's differences between Europe and the United States. In Europe, they're almost allowing this to happen because they do want eventually people to settle there, because they want more control, they want to establish more regulations and rules. But most of it is fear mongering, and it's being used to divide people against each other, because now you have the migrants versus the people in Europe, and they're fighting, and things are getting out of control. And then you have the people in Europe that are saying, oh my goodness, these people are violent, and you have public unrest. And what happens when you have public unrest? You have more regulations, more surveillance, the surveillance state that's empowered. And they're trying to do the same thing here in the United States. The problem in the United States is it's just very hard to buy that. And we still, because literally the people that come in from these countries in Latin America or Haiti or African countries, most of them are going to Europe, but they literally, most of them have zero desire to even be in the public eye, because they're just trying to work and send money home. That's it. And
for people in the chat, they're going to let them vote. Listen, let me tell you something. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because the fact is that it's the theory that they're allowed to come in and then they're allowed to vote. Nobody knows more about elections than the Convo Couch. This is what we do. We go to Latin America. We know our game. You know how many times I've seen data, and I made phone calls today, data in which we saw, hey, man, a bunch of illegal immigrants voted and they changed the elections. You know how many times that happened? Zero. None. And you should be pushed. Can you please show me some data in which we saw illegal immigrants voting that changed an election? It never happened. It never, ever, ever, ever happened. And like Fiorella said, when it comes to the United States, We know this from California and Florida. Most of the immigrants do not even want to participate because they know they can get in trouble for it, and they hide in the shadows. Illegal immigrants, undocumented workers do not vote. And how do we know this? Because we look at data. We look at data all the time. Zero. And this is the thing that I can't believe Vivek Ramaswamy hasn't been pressed on as he's going around and repeating this stuff. This is something that Tucker Carlson's been saying that he hasn't get pushed on. Do you have any evidence of this? Any data that shows illegal immigrants can vote? And it's a very dangerous rhetoric. It's a very dangerous rhetoric.
Yeah.
And here's the difference. Vivek Ramaswamy doesn't believe that there was collusion in 2020 election with Donald Trump. He doesn't believe it was a rigged election. He believes that big tech in the media swayed the public and had the narratives, and that's where there's some foul play. I do. I believe there was so many inaccuracies. I looked at all the data. I don't believe that was a fair election whatsoever. Okay, so that's where we differ. Most of his colleagues, most of the people supporting him, believe with me. But he believes in the great replacement theory where immigrants are allowed to come in and are allowed to vote. And he's even said it so they change the electoral map of the United States. I'm completely think that's bonkers. And anybody repeating this shit without pushing back and saying, where do you get this from? What data do you get that shows illegal immigrants are going to be able to vote? They're not going to be able to vote. Now,
well,
in Nevada, for instance, let me just finish really quick. I'll hand this over to you. In Nevada, it's automatic registration. So when you go to register to get your driver's license, you get a ballot sent to them. There might be illegal immigrant ballots that get into the hands of the establishment or somebody else where there's electoral fraud going on and using that ballot. But illegal immigrants voting, and this is something I saw at Freedom Fest last year when Wayne Allen Root said this stuff. I said, Wayne, I went up to him after. I said, where's your evidence on this? Where do you see that illegals are voting? Well, I just know that's, what's happening, fam? They're allowed into the country and they're told at the border, all right, we'll let you in as long as you vote Democrat. Where is it part of the Democratic platform, which they're claiming that this is part of their platform? No, it's not. What people like Van Jones and all these other people are talking about, they're talking about the fact that we cannot hide the fact that in 20 years from now, we'll be less white of a country because we'll be having babies that are mixed and whatnot. And that's just the way the culture of the country is going to change, and that they need to accept that. It's not the great replacement theory where the illegal immigrants are going to vote in exchange for being allowed into the country. It's bonkers that nobody has pushed back on Vivek Ramaswamy for this stuff. It's ridiculous. And he says he wants to have a conversation about it. I'm glad to have the conversation. He still hasn't returned on any of my calls. Vivek Ramaswamy is not taking any tough interview out there whatsoever. He goes to the batshit crazy leftist, and then he escalates that stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's just ridiculous that he's getting away with pushing this thing. I have videos from Tucker, and I have videos from him to show what they're saying, and we can prove them 1,000% wrong.
And before you just go, I just want to say, in order to vote, you need to have an address, and how you get this address, and you need to be registered to vote. You need a license. People without papers don't have a license. Now, you can get a license after a while, but it will say that you are not allowed to vote. You need a social security number. Again, people without papers don't have a social security number. So all of these things that you need, you would need to really go out of your way to vote. And you can eventually get a social security number if you don't have papers. You could before. Now it's like next to impossible to do that. And also, in order for that to happen, you would have to understand the U.S. election system and how it works. And they literally wouldn't, because they literally don't speak the language. They don't speak English. And the people working these elections barely even know what's going on. So they just know that they need to find a trace of you living at this address, and then that you are registered to vote. If you're not registered to vote, if anything, you don't, even as an American citizen, you can't vote. So it just doesn't make any sense that they're.
I'm saying there's people in the chat saying, no, you're wrong, with zero evidence. Dude, you know how much data we have looked at? I called 3 election integrity activists today, and one of them is against immigrants coming into the country because he thinks it's wrong. But I asked him, I said, is this great replacement theory have any legs to it whatsoever? Have you ever looked? And I'm talking about data wonks, guys who look at data all day long until your eyes are squinty. Never once, not once people in the chat who believe in this crap. They still, and they echo this crap that when immigrants get here, they get a phone and a luxury car and a pair of new Nikes, and they get all these things that we don't get. It's just so great. I mean, you guys are just like, you have no evidence of this shit, and it just drives me bonk. Not once. The great replacement theory is a dog whistle. It's a bullshit conspiracy theory. Immigrants do not vote in mass. They don't do it. And we worked in the restaurant business. You go ask the dishwasher, hey, man, you're going to vote? Oh, hell no. No way. They're not going to do it. They're not going to put their lives in jeopardy. They're in the shadows. They work. They send their money home. As less noise as possible. So anybody who's repeating stuff, blah, blah, you have zero proof, and I have a ton of proof to show you that you're wrong. I'm sorry. And somebody, if the Vivek wants to take a tough interview, right, please do so, because the fact that you're pointing this shit out and you're talking about this like it's part of their platform, where's part of their platform? Do they make a deal at the border when they come in, fam? I mean, and here's something to point out. You would know about this too. Their children, the children that were born in the States, those children of immigrants, they're not guaranteed Democratic voters anymore. In fact, they don't like a lot of the immigrants that are coming in illegal at all. Can you, as a Peruvian woman, can you please, talk a little bit about that? Because if this whole theory is, well, their children that are born here are eventually going to vote for them. So they're making a deal, the great replacement theory, that in 20 years down the road, after they have a child that's born here, he's going to vote Democrat. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because this nonsense is just nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, I have uncles that are not born in the United States, and they're Republicans, and they support Donald Trump, or they supported Donald Trump, or they hate the Democratic Party. I have, family members that literally came to the United States in the last 20 years that literally don't like what they say illegal people coming into the United States that buy into this sort of thing, which is ironic and self-hating and all of these psychological things. But, it doesn't, there is zero guarantee that people's children of immigrants are going to have the same political upbringing at all. I mean, my dad is a Democrat, and I loathe the Democrats. So it's just like, it's just insane.
It's more of the Republican right-wing fucking narrative of blaming immigrants for everything. It's terrible.
Yeah, and it's done, but the Democrats also, don't confuse that the Democrats weaponize minorities and weaponize these people to go at them. But guess what? They're finding out very quick that they've been weaponized. I mean, people like myself and Jonny and everybody else, we know that they weaponize, Latinos and Black people and Jews, right? They're weaponizing all of these people for votes. That's quickly changing because people realize what their game is. But that has nothing to do with people who are of illegal or undocumented status coming in and voting. It doesn't happen. It would be next to impossible for it to happen, not just from the system itself, but also from the people coming in to have the desire to do that. They have zero desire to do that.
Yeah. Let's play Tucker Carlson, because Tucker has done some things that are been decent. And listen, I appreciate Vivek Ramaswamy pointing out Nikki Haley's ties and connections to the military industrial complex, and he does. But I mean, this guy has been able to skate like I said, he's going to join the Olympic team. He's skating so much. Let's show Tucker where he is wrong when he's saying that this shit is true. Go ahead.
Theory recently. It's everywhere in the last 2 days, and we're still not sure exactly what it is.
If you can go full screen.
I know that the left and all the little gatekeepers on Twitter become literally hysterical if you use the term replacement, if you suggest that the Democratic Party is trying to replace the current electorate, the voters now casting ballots, with new people, more obedient voters from the third world. But they become hysterical.
Dude, is your internet okay?
What's happening, actually? Let's just say it. That's true.
Okay. He just said, all right, take it down. He's just saying right there that they're casting ballots. He literally said that immigrants are casting ballots to, I mean, and no, people in the chat, I'm not blaming the Republicans, whatnot. I'm calling it like it is. Once again, Vivek Ramaswamy believes that there was no funky business in the 2020 election. I don't feel that same way, right? So I'm sticking on the Republican side over here, or what the Republicans are saying. But when it comes to the great replacement theory, I'm calling it like it is. And Tucker was wrong for saying this. And let's bring up Vivek's now video. Let's get Vivek's video ready now too as well. Okay, it's hilarious. It's hilarious to think that illegal immigrants are coming in and voting in mass. Here's Vivek Ramaswamy on the debate stage.
The stage, at least, who can say that January 6th now does look like it was an inside job, that the government lied to us for 20 years.
It looks like that day one.
In 9/11.
Something's up with the internet. Maybe let it load.
That the great replacement theory is not some grand right-wing conspiracy theory, but a basic statement of the Democratic Party's platform. That the 2020
stop right there.
election was indeed stolen.
So he mentioned it right there, right? The great replacement theory is not some conspiracy theory. It's part of their platform. Where is it part of the Democratic Party's platform that they're going to allow somebody in this country in exchange for their vote when they cannot vote in mass? And they don't want to vote in mass. I mean, it's right there in black and white, fam.
Yeah, I mean, Vivek is a politician. He's a bullshitter. You can tell he talks out of both sides of his mouth. For example, he will say he is against sending, so he stands by Israel, and Israel has the right to defend itself, but the United States should stop involving itself in conflicts. However, he won't say that he won't fund Israel because he keeps saying, but
he hasn't been pushed, fam. He hasn't been pushed. Nobody's pushing him. He gets to skate in every single interview. If he's going to go, well, and he's even saying, he mentioned, not a RFK doesn't even have this feeling about it. I do. I think we should stay out of it. Well, then you have to ask him, well, if you're saying we're staying out of it, does that mean that you're going to stop the funding to Israel overall every year for their Iron Dome and everything else?
Yeah, but he won't say that because he stands by Israel.
That because he knows if he answers that in the way he's trying to answer that without being able to skate, that's it for Israel. We talked to David Camp earlier. What's that?
He's Pontius Pilate. He washes his hands out of everything. Like he says, "Oh no, I'm not gonna do that." But really, he says it, and he leaves it open ended because he knows he can go back. Let's say he would become president, he can go back and change his position, and he changes his position the way he speaks depending on who he talks to. He's a fake. He's a phony. And he should be, met with the same sort of, like the same sort of defense and the same sort of response that we would give to anybody else. Just because his Israel position is non-intervention, it's not giving any more, attention to Israel, doesn't mean he's saying he's going to stop the funding. He literally has said, "I support Israel. I love Israel. I stand by Israel." He has said all of these things. Again, I don't understand why people are trying to find saviors, whether it's RFK Jr. or Vivek Ramaswamy or any of these people that are basically running under the same thing. They are all going to pledge their allegiance to Israel, which is insane. Yeah. And none of these people have been pushed. And the right wing isn't the answer to the Democratic failure. It's just not. It isn't. They have no good candidates, including Donald Trump. Donald Trump isn't going to save the United States. He seems better in some ways because of how dismal the Biden administration has been. And, but do people think that we're going to de-escalate our warmongering if Donald Trump becomes president? No. And by the way, since they're going after him so hard, this is going to only rile up his base more. And I believe that in a way, that is what they want. That is what the elites want. They want to rile up Donald Trump's base. They want perhaps for him to win. They know that they'll allow it to happen. And I think we will see conflicts with China and the Middle East, because this is where the Republicans shine, especially, as well as the Democrats. Conflicts in the Middle East and China.
Let's get the next video ready, Jamie, with Dana Bash and Vivek. You know, when he does make comments like, okay, I would not fund this here. I was against the funding in Ukraine. I'm against the funding over here. Like I said, you have to call him. So you're going to cut off all funding to Israel together, because like Dave DeCamp said, if the United States cuts off their funding to Israel, it's game over. This war ends. They got to stop immediately. And so he would have to answer that. And I'd like to see him answer that with the populist Republican base who is so pro-Israel. But then, you know, why not ask him another question? So, okay, you're saying let's not intervene, but we're already involved. When you become president, are you going to call for a ceasefire or not? I want to see what he has to say. Nobody pushes this guy whatsoever. Like, and just like RFK won't take the interview with me, Vivek Ramaswamy won't take the interview with us. They keep avoiding hard interviews all the time. Let's just reaffirm. And I don't know what this person, Kevin Brady, is saying. They don't need to vote to change an election.
Huh?
Let's just, I don't even know what the hell that means, man. What are they going to do? The mental telepathy? They're going to, Let's listen to Vivek Ramaswamy with Dana Bash. And once again, Dana doesn't even push back. Like, where's your evidence that immigrants are voting in mass? I'm telling you guys, Fiorella and I look at data like nobody's business. There's zero evidence. We've never once seen anybody come to us and say, hey, we got to overturn this election. Illegal immigrants were voting and they changed the election. Never happened. It's a figment of your fucking imagination. Go ahead.
When the Democratic Party and Biden, the leader of the Democratic Party now, as recently as 10 years ago with Mayorkas sitting at his side, expressly talking about non-white populations exceeding white populations, that being a good thing, and immigration policies they've advanced to achieve that result remain in Mexico, which they're not enforcing. Let's have that debate rather than saying this is a dog whistle, this is going to cause violence. What I'm worried about is that we are going to have, I would say, I want to be careful in the way I speak about this, because I don't want to get to a place about violence. We're skating on thin ice as a country right now. But as a leader, it is important to give people the permission to say in public what they'll otherwise say in private. A lot of it grounded in truth, to be able to have that debate without labeling somebody
ask you one question,
a xenophobe or a racist or a
let's just say,
denier or anything
let's
else.
just say, and I'm not going to use the term anymore, because it is a dog whistle for people out there who are looking for reasons to go after people of color and Jews. But let's just assume that was something that was happening. Is that so wrong? What's wrong with people
First of all,
color?
let me just pause right there.
Being a majority in this
Let me just pause right there. This is a legitimate discussion for us to have, but we can't have it both ways, to say that this is something that we're actually advocating for. It's an express policy, and we acknowledge that it's part of an express policy objective. Then let's actually get to the debate about whether this is good or not for the country, right? And so I embrace that, but thank you for getting to a useful place rather than just saying anybody who's saying this, if a person on the right says that it's a conspiracy theory, if a Democrat says it's immigration policy. And my view is I don't care about skin color. I could care less for skin color. Do you share the ideals of this country?
The Jews will not replace us. Comes from the Great Replacement theory. I know you have to go, but just go back and look at that.
And I would say go back and look at, air for the people that are watching this, the videos that Mike Johnson has released of Capitol Police allowing them in. We should be able to at least have that debate in the open and air the video saying exactly what otherwise.
All right, stop it. That's good.
With Mayorkas.
That's good. I had enough of this. I can't. This guy is so full of shit. What does that January 6th have to do with the Great Replacement theory? Like, this guy gets the. I mean, he is so full of it. And once again, man, it's just like, the reason that this is really bad too when you talk about the Great Replacement theory, because once again, it takes attention off of who is fixing these elections to begin with. You're totally blaming the immigrant instead of blaming the establishment. That's what you're doing.
But that's
what you're doing.
But that's the whole game, Pasta. Literally, it's the same shit every time. They have to blame the immigrant, or, for example, Democrats blame the Russians, Republicans blame China and Venezuela and all the immigrants. So Why? So you don't go attack the people who are actually doing this. And that is how this works, because then you attack each other. I mean, it is just clear. It's 101. I mean, what is going on here? You know, like, if you focus on the immigrant, you don't focus on the actual people in charge of this country.
Exactly.
And that's how you get away with these debates going this way. For example, Dana Bash focuses on the Jews, when this is actually more directed towards the people south of the border, right? Central Americans, the people, Mexico, Venezuela, all these people whose countries we fucked, the United States government has fucked over and over again, has sanctioned to death, has cooed over and over again. Nobody talks about, none of these people ever talk about what led to the immigration of these people into other countries like the United States. And that the United States has never had a reckoning with it, right? And yeah, I mean, you could say that it is a racist dog whistle, but the way you completely debunk this is really beyond that, because you can't change the fact that some of these people are self-hating or racist. I mean, Vivek, come on. But the reality is you have to really talk about the inaccuracies of what they're saying and how factually incorrect it is that illegal immigrants are voting, because it's just ridiculous. They have no evidence for this, and they're using it to fearmonger the right into a more of a Republican position against, you know, all of these liberals and all of these, you know, illegal immigrants, blah, blah, blah. We're going to vote liberal. And of course, getting the liberals to go, oh my gosh, you know, you hate Jews and blah, blah, blah. So at the end of the day, you have this weird concoction of things where you have Vivek Ramaswamy standing with Israel and saying it, and Dana Bash saying, but this is against Jews and this is anti-Semitic. Clearly, this isn't really about anti-Semitism. This is about fear-mongering people that are basically, you know, it is going to happen, by the way. You know, there's definitely more minorities everywhere. It's weird because in Russia, you do have like definitely like underlying racism and similar problems, but not in the same way. You don't have the same history because Russia didn't colonize a bunch of people, didn't invade a bunch of people. So you have a bunch of Asian looking people that are Russian that live in like the middle of the country in the Far East, and they are fully Russian. I just attended an exhibition in Moscow with my mom who came to visit me, and we were looking at all the different regions in Russia. It's so vast and big that we want to visit. And all these people, they literally are Russian, but they look Asian. And it's normal, and nobody's like, oh, they're not Russian. Like, it's just a completely different vibe. And I don't understand, other than the history and the trauma that the United States obviously was founded on. That's the only difference, I think, because there's really no other explanation.
Yeah, so he gets to skate on this great replacement theory, right? Nobody pushes him on that. He gets to skate on Israel-Palestine, where he's just playing, you know, the Mr. We won't get involved without being told, okay, so you're going to pull, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, tell him, put him on the spot. Are you going to pull all aid to Israel in the future then? No more Iron Dome? Because that's the end of Israel then, right? We know that. You know, Dave DeCamp said all the bombs that are being dropped. Ask him, oh, well, we are involved. You're going to call for a ceasefire? None of these questions are asked. But the area he gets to skate the most on, this over here, his attitude towards China. Put this up, Jamie. How could anybody doing an interview with him not ask him this question? Okay, leave it right there. It's not crazy to think that the same CCP that unleashed hell on the world with a man-made lab virus, and which now supplies the precursors to synthetic fentanyl to Mexican drug cartels who use it to lace other pharmaceuticals with fentanyl, might choose to poison the legal pharmaceutical supply chain to unleash further hell on earth on U.S. In the case of conflict. We can't depend on any enemy for our daily life period. How does anybody who have an interview with this guy not put up this tweet right here and say, where is your proof that it was the CCP that unleashed the hell on earth? He's blaming China for the coronavirus when all the evidence, there might be a little line where you can say, well, what was China's involvement? You know what I'm saying? And there's ways to push back that if you really knew what was going on. Leave it up. Leave it up. I want that up. How does anybody not question him about this tweet right here, right now? This guy gets to skate all the time in every interview he has. How do you not bring this up right here, fam? This one right here. He is blaming China for the coronavirus. Is that not divisive? Is that not? I mean, fam, please. I'm dying to hear your thoughts, and I'm dying to hear why nobody who has an interview with this guy asked this guy this question right here.
Well, so because
2 million views,
again,
by the way.
you have to pay. So Vivek has framed himself as somebody that understood COVID right from the get-go, that he saw what it was and that it was, the vaccine was bad. That's, this is what he says in interviews. And he clearly doesn't understand a thing. And if you don't get him on this, do you understand what COVID is? Do you understand that both China and Russia have taken proof and evidence of Ukrainian biolabs having literal bioweapons directed specifically against the Chinese, the Russians, the Slavs, and African people? And they brought this up to the UN, and they showed all of this evidence. And Vivek here is still on the old 3-year-old actual conspiracy that the CCP made this virus, when in reality, everything traces back to the good old USA and Fauci. And now he's acting like he's going to be the guy to hold Fauci accountable, like he's the guy that understands COVID, because he's a bullshitter and he can bullshit his way from every interview, just saying what people want to hear.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
Even Steve Bannon admits that United States intelligence was involved. Even Steve Bannon admits that. This guy is blaming fucking China and nobody's calling him on it. Vivek, we're here when you're ready to have a real interview. Wow. Even fucking Steve Bannon admits that American intelligence was involved. Ralph Barrick, freaking EcoHealth Alliance, Fauci. How long have we been funding gain of function? And this guy is going to blame China and nobody's going to call him on it.
Because he's better than Nikki Haley, because he's better than RFK, because, just because he might say some things that are better doesn't mean you don't call out his inaccuracies. This is the time to do it when the guy's running, right? He's running, and he's running under false pretenses. He's a fake. He's a phony. He contradicts himself.
Take a tough interview. Him and RFK won't take tough interviews anymore, right? They just won't do it. RFK will go back to, breaking points and constantly go there because he knows they'll only push so far. He won't come. He still hasn't taken an interview with me. He's been avoiding me. He won't get with Max Blumenthal, right? Vivek, I reached out to him several times. He won't take an interview with me. No way. But, let's go to a safe space where we won't get pushed on blaming China for the coronavirus, where we can spare out some bullshit about fucking Israel, and then we can blow wind about the great replacement theory without any proof and actually claim that immigrants are voting to change the electoral politics, to change the electorate. Yeah, please. Vivek, we're here. You got my email. Let me know when you're ready.